If he realised that perhaps there was a way to sort the problems out in the Middle East, if it might upset his mate George Bush, that's the only problem, I suppose.
Yeah.
Why can't someone convince him that it wouldn't, as you have said, be such a difficult problem if somebody in Tony Blair's position was to start talking in this way?
Yeah, I mean, he's too late now, and it's the fag end of his administration. I think, James, he'll be announcing that he's going on the week of the 23rd of September after the demonstration I talked about. But he could have, but of course he's lost any possibility of being an honest broker by the role that he's played as the shield of George Bush in all these previous conflicts. And don't forget that these weapons we're talking about that destroyed the center of Beirut, and I'm looking from the 13th floor, I can see the place where the destruction took place. These weapons were shipped through our country, shipped through our airport, and everybody here knows that. And it was Mr. Blair in St. Petersburg, in Europe, and in New York at the UN, who did everything he could to stop these bodies, demanding an immediate ceasefire 30 days before the ceasefire actually took place. And so literally, the blood of hundreds of people and much of the destruction that I can almost see from here is actually his responsibility. So he's blown it. But once upon a time, Britain had considerable influence in the Arab world.
How do the people of the
Lebanon... blown it.
How do the people of the Lebanon feel about the British now, do you think, George? Have you been there long enough to sort of get an idea?
Well, they're very, very angry, and one of the roles that I have, not just here, James, but across the Muslim world, is to say to angry Muslims, look, don't consider us all as Tony Blair. There are many of us, millions of us. In the case of the Iraq war, you and me, and millions of others. In the case of this Lebanon war, a very clear majority of our country thought that Blair was on the wrong track. And one of my jobs in life is to go around like the man that follows the Lord Mayor's parade, sweeping up after Tony Blair in the Muslim world, telling people that they should not judge our country and certainly not judge our people by the actions of our government.
Okay, let's move on. Another call coming up. Nicole in Hertfordshire. Nicole, you're on the air through to George Galloway.
Good evening, good evening. The first thing I'd like to ask Talk Sport is, in the interest of fairness, are they going to do a programme from Kiryat Shmona in northern Israel with Ian Collins? Because Kiryat Shmona is absolutely blown to smithereens as well. And I'd like to know if that's going to happen, because after all, there are two sides to every story, not just one.
Well, let's get the answer to that one first of all, Nicole, although I think we answered that earlier on. George?
Yes, I mean, there are two sides to every story, and the Israel side of the story has rather a lot of powerful people spouting it. And their side of the story is spouted by the British government, it's spouted by the Times and the Sunday Times and the Sun and the News of the World and the other Murdoch papers. It's spouted by the Daily Telegraph and the Sunday Telegraph, and it's spouted by many people like Charlie Wolfe and others on our own radio station and on other radio stations. What people like Nicole cannot handle is that somebody like me, who's got a mouth and who knows the subject inside out, is being able to speak directly to the British people for just 2 hours on a Saturday and a Sunday. That's what they can't handle. Now, I'm sure if Ian Collins wants to go to Kiryat Shmona, the Talk Sport will not stand in his way, and welcome to it. But this is my show, and I'm having my say, and I'm happy for people like Nicole to come on and tell us what she believes, rather than merely ask questions of us.
Well, I'll tell you what I believe, George. Your previous caller, I do not agree with at all. There's 25% Muslims living within Israel that have lived there, born there, and have the best standard of living in the Middle East. I don't know where you've got the figure of 6% in Haifa, but I've been to Haifa many times. I lived there for quite a long time myself, and I don't agree with your figure of 6% because you've got Jews and Arabs living side by side very, very peacefully in Haifa together. What I would like to say, though, is your point that you made about all the Arab countries want to recognise Israel. Hamas, and let's face it, they're probably the most crucial, if you want to call them a government, in the Middle East for peace are not recognising Israel. And, last year when Israel pulled out of Gush Katif and Gaza, that was a trial run, but all we've had is Qassam missiles coming over, thousands of them, into the towns of Ashkelon and Sderot. I mean, that's not a good example of how it would be if we pulled out of the West Bank.
When you say we, Nicole, are you an Israeli?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that you said that, even if you said it at the end of the conversation rather than the beginning. And it's important to hear what you've got to say. Now, the reality is that Hezbollah have already implicitly recognized Israel. They took part in the elections. And you made a revealing slip when you said if you want to call them a government. Well, Hamas are the government. Hamas won the election. And you don't have any choice as an Israeli to call them a government or not a government. You have to respect the right of the Palestinian people to choose their government, just like the Israelis choose their government. I don't have the right to choose the government of Israel. That's your job. And it's the Palestinians' job to choose the government of Palestine. And it's your job to speak to them. Instead of speaking to them, you immediately froze all their tax revenue. You immediately began attacking their infrastructure. You've been bombing and killing in Gaza since the day that you left Gaza. And that's a main source of this problem. Now, have it your own way, Nicole. You can have war if you like. But don't then complain about Kiryat Shimona being destroyed. Don't complain about people blowing themselves up at falafel stalls in Tel Aviv. Don't complain about it. You either want war or you want peace. Now, I'm saying to you, you should choose peace. And if you choose peace, there is a party on the other side ready to negotiate a negotiated settlement. But the price is justice. Don't forget that.
Well, let me say, George, that number one, 99% of Israel wants peace, that's for sure, because we've had enough of our brothers and children and sons getting murdered and getting killed. It happens on both sides, so it's not just the way that you're looking at it from this very slanted view. But let me tell you that if we did have a partner for peace and somebody to speak to, then we would speak to them. But I don't agree with you that Hamas is recognising us. They're not. And the only reason that Israel has gone, has had to target militants in Gaza is because the constant barrage of Qassam missiles that is coming over into Israel. We can't be expected to live like that. Why should we live like that? No other country in the world would expect to live like that. And I'm sorry, I just do not agree with you. And it's very easy for you to say, sitting in London, you're not living in Kiryat Shimona, you're not living on the borders in Israel, you're not living in Ashkelon, you're not having to deal with the suicide bombers, you're not having to deal with it. So it's very easy for you to talk about it.
Well, I'm a lot closer to Israel-Palestine this evening than you are, and you're not there either. And frankly, if I may say so, you don't sound very Middle Eastern to me. You don't sound like somebody from the Middle East to me. You sound English. And this is the problem, you see. In Haifa, the houses are being inhabited by people from England and New York and Vienna and Paris, whilst the people whose houses they are living in the Jenin refugee camp. Now, I stress this to you. You say you don't have a partner for peace. President Arafat went to Washington and signed the Oslo Agreement 12 years ago. 12 years ago, this Oslo Agreement was signed. And I supported it, even though it meant signing away the rights of many people related to me, who were close to me, who I had struggled on the Palestinian question with, because it was a very partial solution. But Arafat signed it. And then you blockaded them, and then you killed them. And now you complain you have to deal with Hamas. Well, I'm telling you that the prisoner's document, which at least you will know about, I don't have time to go into great detail in the half hour we've got left, makes it clear, written by the Hamas prisoners, that if there is a settlement of a Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital, with contiguity between the West Bank and Gaza, with an Arab border, with no Zionist settlements, and with the rights of the refugees respected, there will be recognition of Israel by the Palestinian side. But you can choose to make excuses and keep on fighting. But don't then come crying when your brothers and your sons, as you just described them, have to give their lives in defense of the indefensible.
Okay, Nicole, thank you very much indeed. Thanks for the moment, George. We'll take a break. We'll come right back with more of your calls.